Welcome to the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapons series. I'm your host, Captain Matt, and today we're talking outboard power for your pontoon or tritoon. You always see the question on Facebook, social media, boat shows, what's the best outboard for my pontoon or my tritoon? So we're going to help you answer that question. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to review 7 outboard options, differences in the outboards, options by the OEMs, and other notable factors. And at the very end, I'm going to tell you what is the best outboard. So, sponsored by the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit. You can pick this up free at boatbuyersecretweapon.com. It's updated for 2021. It's a 20-page file, really a book at this point, that's going to help you through the entire buying process, from what's the right boat to you, how to demo a boat the right way, questions to ask dealers and private sellers, how to maximize your trade, boat loan, boat insurance information, and a lot more. It's got a calculator, how to calculate the true cost of boat ownership. That's very powerful. And we've also added some extra videos that you can get. You have to get the toolkit, and we'll give those to you. That are 2 special videos that you won't find, and they're very, very valuable. So let's talk about which is the best outboard. So the 6 major ones that we're going to talk through: Yamaha, Evinrude, Tohatsu, Honda, Suzuki, Mercury, and then a mystery outboard that you may not be aware of that I think is worth talking about. So let's go through just each individual manufacturer. The Suzuki, you'll find that Suzukis are very popular amongst charter people. They're very popular in the repowering market because they tend to be a little bit less expensive compared to the others. So they've got their 350 to 225, which is a V6, their 200 to 70 horse, which is an inline 4, their 60 to 40, which is a 3-cylinder, 30 to 2.5, it's their portable model. Depending on your engine, or depending on the type of boat, the performance that you're looking will kind of depend on which of these you're going to look at and dive more into. So this is going to be a higher level overview. The Honda 250 to 200 V6, their 150 to 335 is a 4-cylinder, their 115 to 75 is a 4-cylinder, their 60 to 25 is a 3-cylinder, and then their 20 to 2.3 is a portable. Now, Honda has the reputation for quality in their vehicles. Their VTEC Honda 4-strokes have, they haven't caught on in the U.S. and are not the most popular. You see a handful of dealers hang them on their manufacturers. Handful of a lot of manufacturers will offer them, but you don't see a lot of dealers ordering them that way. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I got a question for you. You can put this in the comment. If you're watching this and you've had an outboard, I would love to hear what year, what make, and what model you had. What's been your experience with it? Where did you run it? What kind of boat did you run it on? And how well did you follow your maintenance schedule? And then your opinion on the engine. So all of those things are important. Where did you run it? Are you running it in freshwater or saltwater? What boat did you run it on? Were you running it on a 25 on a John boat, or were you running 250 on a dual console? What's been your experience? Well, you can't really say what's been your experience if you don't say how you followed the maintenance schedule as well. And we'll talk about why these are important. But I would just love to hear from all of you listening, if you've owned one, only if you've owned one, what your real life experience, and put the year, make, and model, and try to answer some of those questions so we get a real world perspective of how the engines performed out in life. So Evinrude, this is, if you don't know, in the spring of this year, 2020, as I record this, Evinrude made the announcement they were stopping their outboard production of their E-Techs, their 2-stroke engines. They said it was due to COVID and it just shut down, but BRP, the parent company, you could say it was, the writing was on the wall. A lot of people predicted this was coming, so it wasn't a huge surprise. And essentially, the marketplace said, 4 strokes are what we want. 2 strokes were only less than 10% of the marketplace, and Evinrude shut down their Evinrude motor operation. They still have their boat parts. They still have the other pieces of their business, which are highly successful, but the E-Techs are no longer. So here's my recommendation. There's going to be a lot of great deals on Evinrudes out there right now. Manufacturers that had ordered them and had them in stock, dealers that had ordered the boats and they're already rigged up. There's going to be some great discounts. Be cautious. The resale and the parts, they're going to be bad news. Now, BRP said they're going to support and they're going to do everything they can for their dealers and their consumers, but the reality is they're not making these anymore. They are not as incentivized to continue providing excellent support on these engines because there's no brand really to unfortunately, there's no brand to maintain the reputation. So even though there's going to be some huge savings, unless you are able to do the work yourself, my personal opinion, and it's strictly my opinion, is that people in 3, 4, 5 years are going to have a hard time reselling these Evinrudes, and they're going to be like the other engine manufacturers that have stopped producing, and these parts are going to be very difficult to get. So that's my take on the Evinrudes. Overall, I've heard people say they were good engines. I've heard people say that they were nightmares. So I don't really have an opinion on the engine other than the situation is where I'm giving my advice from. So next we have the Tohatsu, very, very small player in the marketplace. They've got a 250 to 150. That's a V6. They just introduced that higher horsepower in 2014. So they're a relative newcomer to the higher horsepower outboards, and you're not going to see too many of them around. They're 115 to 25 are all 4 cylinders, and they're 20 to 2.5 are their portables. This is where you're going to see Tohatsu most often on a dinghy for a sailboat, a kicker motor. That's where they really excel. Those higher horsepower is you don't see them much. You may see them on some government, some work boats where they're buying directly from the manufacturer and doing some repowers. Mercury, one of the big players between Yamaha and Mercury, probably makes up about 70% of the outboard market. Although Suzuki is coming on strong, especially in the repowers, and rightfully so. A very reliable and good engine in a lot of applications. But Mercury, we're going to break down in not just the horsepower, but Mercury has 5 different categories. So they have their Mercury Verado, which is their supercharged engine, the higher horsepower. They've got their Mercury 4-strokes, which is kind of their standard. That's what you're going to look for in a pontoon typically. They've got their Pro XS, which is part of their fishing lineup for high-end speed. They've got their diesel engines that they've recently come out with, and they've got their C Pro, which are their commercial engines for the commercial applications, people that are putting 1,000 hours a year on, police boats, fire boats, DNR, wildlife, Coast Guard, those types of applications. So we'll break them down. The Mercury 4-strokes, they're 300 to 175 are V8s and V6s. Very, very strong outboards. Their 150 to 80 is the inline 4. Their 150 is probably their most popular engine and probably the most popular outboard size engine right now, especially with all the tri-toons putting a 150 on and have a nice performance out of that. The 60 to 40 is an inline 4, and their 30 to 2.5 is their portable. The Verados, they've got their 400 and 350, which is an inline 6. Their 300 and 250 is a V8. Those Verados are supercharged engines, and those are extremely, extremely quiet engines. Their Pro XS is geared towards their fishing line, so you're gonna see those on bass boats. You're gonna see them on some multi-species boats, some bay boats, and they're set up for acceleration for speed, whereas their four strokes are going to be more geared towards that torque and being under a heavy load. So their Pro XS, their 300 to 175 is V8s and V6s, and their 150 to 115 is the inline four. Their Mercury Racing engines, these are their high performance. They just came out with the 450 horsepower not too many years ago. It might have just been released in 2019, I believe. Their 400 and 300, and then their 400 Verado, the supercharged, which is under their racing engine category. You'll also, on the Mercury, you'll find different lower unit setup. So that foot, their standard is what you'll find on a lot, but the command thrust, you'll see those on some of the pontoons. It's basically just a heavier duty gear casing that's going to allow you to have a larger diameter prop, and that lower unit is going to be able to take that extra wear and tear because it has bigger, heavier duty gears. So that is what you're going to see most often on the pontoon settings, okay? So that's the only one we're going to talk about. They have the others, the Torque Master, the Sport Master. Some of those are designed towards speed, boats that are going in excess of 85 miles an hour and in that high performance range. The heavy duty are those that are going to be really just workhorses and in that C Pro series that are the commercial. Now, Yamaha also has different categories. So they've got their standard Yamaha 4-stroke, their SHO VMAX or their VMAX series. They've got the XTO, which is their new big V8 offshore 425. We'll talk about that. So their standard 4-stroke, this is what you're going to typically see on the pontoons and tri-toons. They've got the 350 to the 150. Those are V8s, V6s, down to an inline 4 at the 150. Their 115 to 75 is an inline 4. Their 70 to 50 are inline 4s. Their 40 to 30 are 3 cylinders, and their 25 to 2.5 are their portable versions. Their VMAX, their 250 to 225 are V8 and V6. Their 175 to 150 are inline 4, and their 115 to 90 are also inline 4. Now, these VMAXs you're going to see a lot on the fishing series, and again, these are their speed versions. They're dialed in and set up for high-end speed. Now their XTO offshore, it's a V8. The 425, they came out, great reviews. The people that have run them have been wildly impressed. These are built for the bigger offshore boats where they're putting twins, trips, and quads, even quints on some of them. But these are some bad engines, and I mean that in a good way. But they've had great reviews from people in the industry, people that have run them, but they're still fairly new. So there's not a ton of them that are out there yet. So we're kind of waiting to see how well those hold up. And the mystery one I wanted to put in here, even though you're not going to really see them on the pontoons and tri-toons. 7 Marine, they've got their 527, their 577, and their 627. They have closed cooling systems, and these are really for your offshore big center consoles, larger boats that are running, and they've really come up with the niche for themselves. And especially as the boats have gotten bigger and bigger, 7 Marine was recently bought, I don't know, recently, a year or two ago, bought by Volvo, and I think they might make a splash in the marketplace. So the question, which is best? We know it's not Evinrude, but here is the best engine for you. It's the one that's the right motor for the application. So if you're getting a pontoon, you're putting a lot of weight on it, and you want to have something that's going to perform in that mid-range well, that's going to get you up on top. You're probably not looking for speed, but here's really what's going to determine the right outboard for you, is who's going to work on the motor, and do they specialize in that manufacturer? because each of these engines is going to have their own computer system to do the diagnostic. Some of them will take some specialized tools. Getting access to parts is better if you have a good relationship. So if you're not going to be working through the dealer that you buy the boat from, and they should specialize in those motors, but maybe they only sell a handful of Yamahas, but most of their boats will have a Mercury on them, or vice versa. Or maybe they do a majority of Suzuki, but they are a Yamaha shop as well. But what do they specialize in, and what are they going to be able to support? Because the worst thing that can happen is you talk to all your buddies and they say, you got to have a Yamaha, you got to have a Yamaha. And then where you boat, there's not a good Yamaha service center. There's not a good Yamaha technician. The other thing you want to watch out for is saying, hey, I'm going to save a lot of money and buy a Suzuki, and you can't find a Suzuki mechanic nearby. Now, here's some information that's going to be valuable. I don't know if I said it or not, but Mercury and Yamaha make up about 70% of the marketplace. Suzuki comes in next. Honda, Tohatsu really aren't worth talking about much. Evinrude, we talked about that. 7 Marine, you're not going to see in the Pontoon tri-toon application. So you really want to make sure, if you're a Yamaha or Mercury, you want to make sure that the mechanic that's going to be doing the work on, you're really happy with them, and that they're going to specialize in the type of engine that you get. Same thing with the Suzuki. If you're going to buy a Suzuki, make sure that there's a good Suzuki technician in your area that not only is there, but is going to be able to fit you in, you have a relationship with, because it's not like taking your Mercedes into the dealership where you pull into any Mercedes, they can work on it on the spot, they've got parts on the shelf. The boating world is different. I did a whole video on the difference between cars and boats and things you need to think about. It really applies here when you're choosing the outboard. If you're repowering, or if you're buying a boat from the manufacturer and you're ordering the engine that you want, who's going to work on it? Can they get the parts? Do they have the software to do the diagnostic? Do they have the specialized tools, if any, that are needed? And almost, do they like to work on them or not? Because that's gonna impact the type of service that you get after the fact. So the bottom line, which is best for you? The one that fits those applications. The Tohatsu and Honda, unless you know that you've got a mechanic that specializes them, that has access to the parts easily, you're probably going to want to lean towards Yamaha, Mercury, or Suzuki. And then depending on the application and the power that you're looking at, is going to really dictate which one of those is going to be best. Sometimes, Mercury is going to be best in kind of that mid-tier. I think their command thrust drive is great for a pontoon application in the 115 to the 50. They do a great job there. Yamaha, their 150 is rock solid. Their 115 is rock solid and has been. Suzuki has a very reliable engine, and they're going to save you money. Just make sure that you've got a Suzuki technician that's going to be able to work on it for you. And also, if you're repowering, consider the cost of changing out your cabling, changing out your throttle controls, changing out your gauges potentially, depending on what you're coming from and going to. Figure that into the equation. But I think, in my opinion, Yamaha, Suzuki, Mercury, you're gonna be happy with the motor in any of those. In any of the pontoon tri-toon applications, and it really comes down to who's going to be servicing. So I think I beat that horse enough. So we'd love to hear your comments, hear your experience with different motors. Remember, the most important thing on these engines is the maintenance that you provide once you own that engine. So many people get upset when their motors don't work properly, and then you ask them, did you follow the maintenance schedule? Did you do your 20-hour break-in properly? Did you change the oil on schedule? Did you, we'll say winterize is just a generic term, but did you put your boat away the right way if you weren't going to use it for a couple of months? Did you flush it if you're running it in a saltwater environment? That maintenance and how you treat that engine. What gas did you put? Ethanol, or did you put straight gasoline in it? Did you change out your gear lube? Did you make sure that your prop was inspected all the time and didn't run with any major dings or bends in the prop causing vibration, which is hard on an engine? Did you follow all those things? Use the right oil, use the right gear lube. Did you check your oil every time out? If you do those things, all of these engines, the Tohatsu, the Honda, the Evinrude, the Mercury, the Suzuki, Yamaha, they're all going to be very, very reliable. So the biggest problem with most engine is the user of that engine doesn't take care of it properly. And if you do that, and you have a good mechanic that you work with, you keep up with your maintenance, you're going to be really happy no matter what decision you make. So that wraps us up. Remember, grab your Boat Buyers Toolkit at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. Subscribe to the channel to get more videos like this. We're adding more and more videos for current boat owners, so you want to subscribe as those come available. YouTube's recommended some videos for you. We've got the best way to make sure you don't overpay for your boat or your repower. You can check that video out as well, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Take care, everybody.